Hello, everybody. So I'm Deborah Brooks. I've been asked by the board to convene this committee, the Legislative Task Force, for our first meeting. Our first order of business, first, welcome everybody back to the new year. Just a little plug, elections will be held on November 8th, since we're the Legislative Task Force. Early voting has started. Please support the Port Washington Public Library's inclusion in the early voting program, so we use it or we lose it. And that's all I'm going to say about the election, except that there's no early voting a week from today, no voting at all. And on Tuesday, you go to your regular polling place. I'm working, I don't know if there are people who are watching from home. I'm working on getting a Zoom link up so that you can come in at the end if the committee wishes to entertain public comments. And if we can't get that Zoom link up, then we'll just ask you to send the public comments, I guess, to me, care of the board, and I can forward it to the committee. But we'll try to work on that later. So without further ado, the first item on the agenda is to select a chairperson. And according to the charter, the chairperson must be a Board of Ed member. So that is Emily Bays, Julie Epstein, and Deborah Brooks. Are there, and I believe we do have a quorum. I just want to count on my windows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Does everybody see a quorum?
Yeah. Can I make a nomination?
Twice.
Deb, I'd like to nominate you to be the chair for this committee.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So now we need a vote. Do I vote for myself? I don't know. All in favor, I guess, just raise your hands or say aye. Anybody opposed?
Aye.
I guess I should vote too. Okay. So either Dr. Hines or Ms. O'Hara. I know, Dr. Hines, you are the appointed liaison. I don't know if Ms. O'Hara is here as a guest or as your designee, but one of you can vote. You don't have to if you don't want to, but so nobody's opposed? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. All right, so I appreciate that. Emily, I have big shoes to fill. All right, with that, we were
Emily, thank you for running the meeting so well for so many years. We appreciated your hard work last year. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thanks, Diane. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you not working today? Are you in your office?
No, I am today. Not like it's being recorded or anything.
For the whole world to see if they want. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda was to schedule the remaining 3 meeting dates. I appreciate everybody who came here to have a quorum. I do want to say that I spoke at quite some length with the Committee on Open Government when this meeting had to be rescheduled the first time. And they were of the opinion that this committee is not a public body within the meaning of the Public Officers Law and the Open Meetings Law. Who was I to argue with them on that? And they said that we could meet virtually, which is, for the people who are watching, that is why we are virtually today, because we are purely advisory. There is not a majority of the board on this committee, and the committee is actually, the majority of the committee itself is citizens, as in non-board members. So that's why we're holding this virtually. We also, I was told, do not need to have a quorum in order to meet, but the charter requires that there be a quorum. And so I'm very grateful to everybody who is here now who could make that happen. I guess we can decide going forward if we want to revise the charter to take a mention of quorum out, or maybe designate the minimum number of people that on the committee who should be part of the meeting so that the meeting can be held. But anyway, that was just a thought I had, an explanation to the public as to why we're meeting virtually, because this committee understands why we're meeting virtually. But I just wanted the public to know. So the second on the agenda is to select the 3 remaining meeting dates. Does anybody want to do that now? Or would you like to, I know I'm the chairperson, I can reorder it, but I was thinking, should we just dive into the legislative priorities first so that Ms. O'Hara can leave if she wants to, if she's a guest, or stay. I'll leave it to the
Deborah,
committee.
actually, to clarify, Ms. O'Hara has been the liaison. All of last year, she was our liaison.
Yes,
So
but this year it was Dr. Hines.
I don't know how that happened, but it should be Kathy O'Hara, who's our liaison with Dr. I mean, and I think she's been the one who's come with topics for us to work on as a committee. So I think you should leave her on.
Okay, well, Dr. Hines, you're her boss. We would love to have Ms. O'Hara here, so
Well, first of all, yeah, I asked Kathy to join us today, just because of the timeliness of her returning from the NISBA conference, which I think was provided some items for us to discuss. I told Kathy offline that I would be the liaison, but I mean, I know how much she brings to the table. So at least for today, she'll be here, and I think have a lot to offer. So.
okay, so then let's go to number 3 on the agenda, which is discussing strategy and priorities, since Ms. O'Hara is here as a guest. Ms. O'Hara, I will turn the mic over to you.
Sure, thank you, and hi everybody again. So I have had a meeting with the New York State ASBO Government Relations Committee as well earlier in October. Some of their priorities that we're looking at, a lot centered around electric buses and this mandate that's supposed to be for 2027. There is funding where they would like to do pilots with districts, anybody that would basically volunteer. They were saying they would provide this pilot. But we actually think it makes more sense to actually look at all of the utilities in the state and have pilots done with school districts and the utilities, because we really think this is an enormous task, especially for school districts. You have to look at things like engineering, the infrastructure. We don't even know if the utilities can do this. So that's our suggestion to SED and also to the state. I believe there's NYSERDA funding that they're trying to put this money aside for this. So I think that's a priority of most organizations in New York State. So does anybody have anything they'd like to add to that or questions?
Adrian?
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Adrienne Kane. So Kathy, was there any mention of subsidies? Because with my experience with natural gas buses as well as electric buses, there's been a huge, in other states, there's been a huge influx of support in the way of funding and building the infrastructure, gifting of the infrastructure to school districts and municipalities. Was there any mention of that? Because it was almost like, if you take a chance on it, we will build it for you,
Right.
and then try it. But I don't know if that's the case here.
It really hasn't. And one of the major challenges is actually getting an electric bus. That was one of the biggest challenges. And they're not even saying you could do like a hybrid, where if it's a gas bus, electric, or gas and fuel, because you have districts up in the rural areas that have to actually have heat for the students, and they can travel like over an hour. So that's why we suggested not just any school that wants to do it, make sure that it's every utility, because LIPA, and they're not always very helpful. So it depends on what region you're in that it's going to work. And then we were talking about, what if you phased it in instead of saying everybody has to do it by 2027, because you have a supply issue with the actual electric buses. So we really feel the state needs to think about it a lot more and kind of tell the school districts how to actually implement this, and that the municipalities and local governments should perhaps lay the infrastructure, not school districts, who we educate students. We shouldn't have to be laying down infrastructure.
So we really don't know who we will be partnering with in our state government until, I guess, November, maybe 9th. What is your organization doing to gear up for this? Are they?
Sure.
What
So
are they?
we're actually part of, it's called ECB. It's an executive committee where NYSBA, the New York State School Boards Association, is a member. NYSET is a member. The NISCUS, the school superintendents, are members as well. So it's an organization where we all work together on the state funding. So when the state is preparing their budget, this is an issue we're bringing up as well, that in addition to different things with foundation aid, we also think that funding for this electric bus mandate should be targeted this way, not just kind of whoever volunteers to do it.
And is this something then that you believe that is not just an issue for your organization and NISBA and NYSET, but that school boards should get involved as well? That
Yes.
this committee should advise the school board or make a recommendation to the school board to write a letter to our state representatives, whoever they may be, when the time comes, to emphasize the importance of the funding, the rollout, the support.
Yes,
the
exactly. And perhaps putting it off, delaying it until they have more information that would actually guide districts of how to actually implement this.
Okay.
And there were also a little bit similar to this, because for the rollout of electric buses, a lot of times they're putting any funding, they're associating it with the wealth of a district. But with the actual tax cap, that doesn't help districts, because a district like us, we can't increase taxes without piercing our tax cap. So no matter how wealthy you are, you still have the same need and the same mandate. So that's an issue that we're trying to look at as well. How can you rework the foundation aid formula that takes these things into account? It's nice that we finally got funded, but there were still issues with the actual foundation aid formula. So that's something that there needs to be a task force that looks at that at the state level. And that's something I think school boards should also be involved with.
Can I ask a question on that?
Mhm.
Because that came up in our last year's legislative task force meeting with the rep that came from ASPO, where I mentioned that, is there currently any legislation even brought to the table at all to relook at the formula or the demographics that they take into account to change it, to update it? Does anyone, does anyone know if that has been brought up yet as far as legislator, like an actual brought up at all? And two, if not, okay, so everyone's shaking their head.
There
no.
has not, yeah, there has not. It's just the talk of putting together a task force where we need all of the, we need to have an understanding of what the current, you have formulas in there and different equations that are very antiquated and are based off of 6 years ago, the demographic information. So it's really not helpful. And with a tax cap, it really ties districts' hands, because you need more funding to meet certain mandates. And the only other way, if you're not getting more revenue because you're wealthy, you have to increase the taxes on your constituents.
So I know there was talk, and I don't know if it was official talk, about changing the tax cap itself. and allowing for more flexibility and leeway, especially in very tight times when prices were high and we were still saddled with the tax cap. You're talking about something different though. You're talking about still the foundation aid. I just want to make sure, because I know we've been talking about foundation aid for many, many years. I know there's a promise to fully fund it. I'll believe it when I see it. I was happy to see more aid this past year, but we are still talking about changing the formula for the foundation aid.
Correct.
But has anything, I'm sorry?
No, I was going to say, actually, foundation aid, it is in law that this year we'll receive, it will be fully funded. So that is something that's in law and we should be maintaining it unless they do like a gap elimination thing. But from everything I heard up in Albany, the revenues that are coming in from Hannabis and other like online gaming, their revenue, they don't expect there to be a shortfall. So everything that was being funded by the federal government, they're telling us we don't need to be concerned.
Okay, I hope you're right. You
Yeah.
know, there was a court order a while back that was requiring fully funding and it wasn't done. So I hope, you know, from your
I
lips.
think they've put the funds aside, is from what I've heard. And I've actually been hearing good things about the budget for this year, that with the increase in CPI, there's also going to be, we should be receiving more state aid because that works into the foundation aid formula.
Great, but nevertheless, we really do need to push for the change in the foundation aid formula.
Yes, in the formula.
So were you hearing anything about pushing to change the tax cap, separate and aside from foundation aid?
That's something my organization has always been trying to do. We were trying to get rid of the tax cap, but there hasn't been any movement on that. We were trying to see if for ENL students or extra needs students, when you have special needs students, if that could somehow be like an exclusion in the tax cap. But that hasn't gotten any legs because they really want to keep few exclusions.
So short of actually removing the tax cap, trying to revise it has also been meeting a stone wall.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Is this something that you think school boards should try to push for nevertheless?
I think it would be helpful. I think if it was coming from enough people and organizations, I think it would be helpful. But I think also focusing on like the 4% fund balance and perhaps increasing that to like 10%. And that's one of the proposals ASBO New York also was looking at, is over 3 years, could we increase that to 10%, which that would bring us up to what other municipalities are allowed.
So that's a preference over the tax cap issue right now?
Yeah, because it gives you the flexibility. If you did have emergencies, you could use that fund.
And this is the unrestricted fund or?
That's the unrestricted.
Unrestricted. Okay.
I think Julie has a.
Julie, did you have a question?
Well, Sandra was before me. I was just going to add as that from a NYSBA standpoint, on October 17th, Debbie went to the resolutions, and the adopted resolutions that were chosen as priorities for the School Board Association, it were the meaningful reforms to the tax levy cap, supporting foundation aid, and support raising the allowable undesignated fund balance for school districts. So the NYSBA, of which we partner ourselves with, right, is already has that as priority. So I feel we can continue to support them. To the original question that was asked about the school bus and the reforms that are being made down the pipe when 2037 will be here before we know it, I think that's a question that has not yet made it to any of the resolutions, although I know NYSBA has been in discussion. They talked about it at the conference this past weekend, but I think that that's a topic that we can decide as a board, if we, or as a committee, if that's something we want to bring to the board.
Thank you. Yeah, I think all of this will be, I think we should look at this as with fresh eyes and just reaffirm the oldies that are still lingering out there, and then bring the other things up to speed. Ms. O'Hara, was there anything else that you wanted to?
Sure, and just to kind of piggyback on what Julie was saying about the transportation, we do actually have one about a shared transportation incentive that this would allow us to actually share costs between school districts. It would make it easier for schools to do that, and you would still receive state aid on it. Because how it is now, districts who are sharing have a reduced transportation aid. So that's actually a bill that's been put through the legislation.
So that doesn't require any further. It's in there. It doesn't require any
It was
further.
through one side of the house in the Senate, but I think it still has to go through the
Assembly. Okay.
the assembly. Yeah, we have no assembly representation yet, so we would need someone in the assembly to sponsor that as well.
Okay. Do you have the bill number by any chance?
Sure, it's that's the Senate 2235, and it's by Brooks.
John Brooks, no relation.
Okay.
Long Island Senator. Okay. Was there anything else?
That's really it as far
Okay.
as the other thing we're always looking at too is civil service and reform. We're trying to actually look at the state level to get reform, because in order to necessitate any change at the county level, we need to first look at the state and what's happening up there, because it's really an issue for every single school district.
Okay. Thank you for that overview. So as a committee then, do we agree that all of these should be a priority? Do we have anything to add? Anything that we think should be in the forefront, Sandra?
I have a few questions. One was like from a while ago. So Ms. O'Hara, I'll ask my other question separately afterward, but for the shared transportation costs, I have read that initiative. I know it's already in place as far as we don't have anyone supporting it yet, but does Port Washington already do shared for transportation costs? I mean, that's an initiative to get funding for that, but does Port already do it? And that one's specific for out of district students.
So Port Washington goes out to bid transportation with other schools. So we actually don't contract with another school specifically. When we can, we do, but we go out to like Dell Transportation or other transporters. So this is something, if someone already had an existing route, we could easily go do that. And they would actually still receive the same transportation aid. So it's actually looking at the transportation aid that district, like if Manhasset was transporting for us, currently they would lose the transportation aid on the revenue they got from us. So this would allow them to get the revenue from us plus aid on top of that. So it's a little different than just piggybacking.
The other question, kind of just because Ms. Brooks, you just asked it of the committee, because you said, are we on board with everything that was kind of brought up just now? But I'm also, there was a lot brought up. And specifically with the foundation aid, which was my question that I had before when I raised my hand. But the thing with the foundation aid is, and it has been brought up in this committee as far as changing the formula, which I think when it was brought up maybe mid-year last year, that is very difficult because that would affect a lot of other school districts, high-need school districts. So I ask if there's an option, instead of focusing so much on changing the formula, instead updating the data used. Because again, I forget his name when the ASBO rep was there last year, it is outdate the census use, right? Like I don't have the PowerPoint in front of me, but I remember it being from what, 2000 that the data census is used from. So could we do a focus more on updating that, which would benefit all, most likely, I'm going to change that, benefit more districts compared to trying to fight with other districts to change a formula that could affect their funding?
Well, typically, if anything were to change, there's always a hold harmless clause in there. So,
That came up
so
last
if you
year.
have a district like Brentwood or Seachem, or that's a high needs, they won't actually start decreasing their funding. They'll hold them harmless. But it'll help the other school districts that really do need more funding because of the tax cap.
Sandra, did you have anything else?
No, I'm curious to see what Julie says.
I'm just going to respond that from the last roundtable, granted, it was pre-COVID, but really not much has advanced. From the last roundtable that we all attended, the discussion on foundation aid was broken into two parts and has been attacked that way. And the first part, Sandra, is to yours, is let's just update everything and make the CPI and the census information all present day, right? So that we're at least covering that base. And there was still battling about it or distraction, because then everyone would get into the reorganization of the formula. So just for some background, that is part of the conversation, and many school districts, if not all, were like, just update the outdated stuff already and be done, and then we can move on to the more complex conversation. It just unfortunately never advanced past that.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had. Thanks.
Do we know what the holdup is with respect to not updating the data?
Politics?
Truly, is that really it, or is there some type of
I have no idea.
backlog?
I don't even know if it's backlog. I think they just had a formula. Nobody's ever gone in and updated it. Some things just don't make logical sense to me. So
I didn't know if maybe there was a way to recommend that. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a staffing issue, or because many places are understaffed, and I wouldn't be surprised if state ed and the state legislature was
no,
understaffed.
because
Whoever-
they have all of the information every year. Schools have to upload
Mhm.
information into the ST3, so they have the information. I don't know if they update it, like Sandra said, are some schools going to show that they're way overfunded, and now everything's going to go wonky. So
Okay, Sandra had to drop off. She let me know beforehand that she would have to go at 10:30. Does anybody else have any priorities they wish to discuss, or help the committee order the priorities, which one we should tackle first, or maybe make a recommendation of two things to tackle? No, okay, so Ms. O'Hara, I would say, in your estimation, what do you think is the most pressing issue? If we had to pick a priority from your perspective, from the financial perspective.
I would say it's the busing, actually, with the electric buses, because schools are really looking at, should they get started on this? And I just don't think it's realistic to actually think we could do that. They're actually talking about personal cars having to be all electric as well. So it's larger than just school districts, but that's my main priority. And as also just taking out the wealth ratio in most, whenever there's grant funding or other like NYSERDA, or there's these green initiatives, they're doing it based on the wealth of the district, which I don't think is a good thing, because all districts should want to be green. It shouldn't be if you're wealthy or not, so with the tax cap, it's difficult to have different initiatives. So I think it's best for having grants that are funded based on your school district, not your name.
Okay, so we can make, I'm trying to remember what the name of that organization is. You're talking about the NYSERDA?
Yeah,
Mhm.
NYSERDA.
Okay, so that would be 1A and 1B, I guess. The electric buses and removing the wealth from the consideration of the grant money.
Right.
Okay. 1A and 1B. Everybody in agreement on that? I see heads shaking yes. Okay. And then what do you think would be the second priority?
I think also the foundation aid, reworking that's something that's going to take time and a lot of analysis.
Okay.
You know,
We can
because
certainly,
I think there's a need for mental health funding, you know, and some of those, if there's grants or funding for that in this budget, I think it should be allocated to the schools based on the number of students, not based on the wealth of a district, because, you know, like I've discussed before, it's not the wealth of the districts. If we were able to tax over the 2%, then you could say it's based on the wealth, but with a 2% tax cap, I think it's different.
I was going to add to that, not only mental health, but security. This unfortunately need for additional security, enhanced security in schools. And also the cyber, that would include the physical security of the students, but also cybersecurity, because some of this is mandated and it should be covered as well, aside from the grant money. I don't know if you see either of those as part of that concern for funding along with mental health. They're separate but related.
Right, we have, for the proposal, for the state aid proposal, they do continue to put things about mental health, but how it's allocated is still yet to be seen.
Okay. And I know that you were talking about the civil service reforms. Is that something that you think the school board should try to tackle either in a letter or in dealing with a meeting with state representatives? I'm trying to organize what we want to do when we meet with whoever is our representative, January, or just a letter. So you've put a lot on the table, and I want to prioritize. I would like to cover it all, but I would like to prioritize it too.
I think on a local level, if we could just get, I tried last year, Elaine Fennick and I tried to meet with the civil service, Nassau Civil Service, and it was difficult. Everything kept getting pushed off. If we could just set up a meeting where we could actually have some kind of conversation, I think that would be wonderful, because it opens lines of communication so they understand what we're going through and we understand the challenges they're going through. I have several school districts that would want to be part of that. I had to actually limit it to like 5 people, but I had like 20 people that wanted to meet with the Nassau Civil Service Commission. So if that's something, if anybody on this task force knows anybody or has connections, I would appreciate that.
With the Nassau County Civil Service people.
Yeah, I think it's Martha Kreisel is the woman who's the commissioner now. And I know she has just gotten on.
Okay, and I guess we could tackle that when if you're able to set up that meeting, and then determine if you wanted any members of this task force to go with you for moral support or to be more outspoken.
Also, the school personnel, they have like a group, they get together also. They were interested in attending as well.
Emily, did you have something you want to say?
I think what Kathy was asking is help in setting up the meeting.
Yeah.
Is that she tried to get the meeting and it wasn't it didn't go through. Now, just to give back, just remind everybody with the history, we did have an issue last year because it had just been the new government. Blakeman had just kind of taken over the county, and we were being asked, we had met with our legislator, if you remember, who had said that she was also having some issues and wanted us to kind of wait before she could help us try to set up some sort of meeting. So I do believe the committee should try to set up a meeting with our legislators, at least at the county level, so that we could, and I think it's time that we do set up a meeting with the actual county executive. We have had meetings with the county executive in the past so that we could make the points known and ask for the help. But again, last year we didn't do that because we just had a change. So I think this year we can definitely go ahead and request those kind of meetings. So I think that's what Kathy was asking, and I just wanted to clarify. It's not for Kathy to set up the meeting. She's asking for our help as a committee to set up this meeting.
Okay, I didn't understand that. Thank you for the clarification. Julie?
Can I just jump in? I know, Adrian, you have your hand just on that point. But remember, this is an advisory committee. So we don't go as the committee to these. This is us bringing it to the board. Representation from the board should really be then representing in that situation if we are moving forward, unless the board designates someone from the committee to move forward, especially since we've made this grand shift to really move in that very advisory role, right? But everything has to first, I just want to clarify the we, and I think Emily, is that's what you were saying, unless I'm mistaken, but I just want to make sure what the we in this is not legislative task force. It is we, the Board of Education.
We will bring all this to the board and we will get the board's approval before doing anything, before calling anybody, setting up any meetings. Understood. Adrian?
Thanks. So in my experience dealing with the Civil Service Board and general elected officials, are we recording this? It really doesn't matter, but are we? We are. Okay. So in my experience, it's all good. I understand that last year I was on the task force as well. We kind of went the straight and narrow, said, please, elected official, meet with us, please, whoever, civil service people, meet with us. And so again, in my experience, you go the tried and true route first, and you get pushed aside. So you not ripple the water, but like Kathy, you said that you have 20 people who want to join us in this meeting. Well, would the board, and this is a question for the board members, be amenable to joining with the other school districts and putting us together as a, not just Port wants to do it, and I have 2 friends. Here we are, a coalition of people who want to come, and we're all these school districts. We're 50 school districts. I don't know how many there are that Kathy's been talking to, but the voice of 20 school districts as opposed to the voice of 1 school district is going to make the county executive or whomever, because in my experience, civil service people are not, whoever's leading it, not looking to talk to you, not looking to talk to us, and not looking to talk to anybody. But 20 school districts coming forward saying, hey, we really would like to talk to you, it's a little harder to push aside. Just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Always strengthen numbers.
And I'd be happy to work with Kathy moving forward, not in this, in this forum as a representative of this group, but not, I don't want to go to a meeting. Thank you.
Well, we certainly can go to the full board and share this idea. And I have no reason to think that the full board would not want to band with other school districts if it's possible, but I can't speak for everybody, but it's my sense that they might be encouraged by that, without having spoken to anybody about it, because it's just being discussed here and now. I just wanted to mention, if there's anybody watching on the live stream, there is a Zoom link that is posted to today's date on the calendar. If anybody in the community didn't hear me at the very beginning. So you can join in by Zoom if you want to give a community comment at the end of this session, which will be in about 15 minutes. Okay, so Ms. O'Hara, where would you say that changing the 4% mandate on the unrestricted fund balance and increasing it to 10%, where would that come in as a priority, do you think?
I would make that a priority. I think it would be very beneficial to schools.
All right. Any other questions or comments about the priorities? And I think so what I will do is I will write these up. I will share these with the board. October 8th is our next board meeting about the priorities we discussed.
November 8th.
Did I say October? Sorry,
In
November.
October, yeah, it's okay.
November 8th. And thank you for the correction. And the board may have other priorities, but I will share them in the order since you've been on the front lines of this. And then whatever our next step should be, and I will communicate those things back to the task force. I think given that we're not subject to the open meetings law, unless anybody has an objection, if there's any, I guess I will report back to this group via email after the meeting so that we do not have to wait until January to meet with legislators or to start writing letters or any of that. I don't want any grass to grow under our feet. January will be here before we know it. So if anybody has any issues with that, given that we're not considered a public body, we're purely advisory, obviously we would need to go back to the regular board with whatever letters we draft for the regular board to approve, the full board to approve. But just in terms of procedures here, does anybody have any issue with that? And we would always update the community at a full board meeting whenever we give the committee report. Everybody okay with that? All right. Anybody have any other comments, concerns, anything? I don't see community members here, so I'm assuming that there's nobody else who has joined, at least not via the Zoom. So the fourth thing on the agenda was discussing inviting new parent community members. I put that on originally last month, but we've had full response from everybody currently on the committee that they would like to continue. And so we are up to all of our community members. I don't see the viability of asking for new members, and that would have to have been done before the November board meeting. So just wanted to mention it's on the agenda. I think I've covered it. Any concerns or comments about that? The old guard members who were grandfathered in will have their terms ending at the end of this year, as will the people who came on as new members last year, which means there will be a full new turnover for the coming year. Everybody will have to submit an application for the 10 community members, except for the Parents Council. Yes, Emily?
I don't think so. I thought, if I remember correctly, the new members were new. The ones that were grandfathered in their term ends, and they would have had to reapply for this year. Am I remembering it wrong? In any case, I don't think it matters that much, honestly. But I thought we grandfathered everybody who had been on before, and they would have to reapply. And we added people last year for the first time. So those people, so I don't think everybody's up this year. But again,
We did that so that we would not have a full new board of people. We would have at
so
least
you
some
wouldn't
old
get
members.
over everybody, correct? So it would have been right now, for instance, Diane, Ron, and George, you've both been on from the beginning, pretty
And
much.
Adrian.
So you would have had to, quote unquote, reapply or not to be on, and then you'd stay on. Like, you understand, like it would have happened already. I don't think you have to worry about it right now. Anyway.
Okay, I just didn't want to
It
violate the
would be a
procedure.
full-
Okay.
Should not be a full turnover. No.
Okay, I was reading the notes from the meeting a year ago, and it says prior members will be grandfathered in from past years' involvement and will be accepting 3 new members per the application process.
Right.
That's what it said in the notes. So the minutes didn't specify for 1 year, but, so shall we, I just want to make sure that we're official on this. Shall we consider the people who were grandfathered in starting a new 2-year term this year? Is that what you're saying, Emily?
I'm saying if they've already expressed to you that they want to stay on, then that's what I would say. Yes.
Okay, is everybody who was grandfathered in okay with that? That you're on for another 2 years unless you decide to step down?
You guys would miss me if I wasn't here.
Yes, we would.
Ron, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Mr.
Thank you.
Borda?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
He's good. Okay,
I'm
great.
good.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, good. So then we don't have to worry about any new applications this year. Wonderful. Okay, so for those of you who are from brand new from last year, we'll worry about you come the summer. Okay, so let's go back to the first item on the second item on the agenda, which was scheduling the remaining 3 meeting dates. This actually worked with the doodle poll and we got a quorum. Really wanted to get a meeting in before the election. I'm glad we did. Thank you for everybody who was here who can make that happen. I'm happy to set out a doodle poll because there are a variety of people who aren't here today for a date in, do we want December? Do we want January? I believe the charter said there had to be at least 4 meetings. Last year's June meeting was canceled. I don't know if we want to have a June meeting, if maybe the meeting should be in May. Any suggestions as to when the remaining, in what month the remaining 3 meetings should be?
I wouldn't.
Typically, they've been in
wouldn't-
January, April, and June.
I would do January next meeting. I think you should wait until, things kind of settle as far as post-election, as you said, and see what's happening. And I would do a meeting in January. And I don't think you should do a doodle, just my opinion. Just let's pick a date right now. I mean, we've never just
Yeah.
pick a date, let people know in advance, pick the dates, and this way they make it work.
Okay, so January, I'm just looking at all the different meetings that are the last week of January, because I don't know if we want to wait until the last week of January, the middle of January. Typically, what do you think? The middle of January? I want to avoid.
The board meeting January 31st, so I think the middle after the holiday, after Martin Luther King Day
Yep.
would probably be good.
Okay, so I'm looking at all the different meetings. I guess we could,
January 19th. I just picked a date.
I'm looking at the calendar. I just saw that there is nothing on January 19th. Great. Okay. Typically the meeting was at 9:30 in the morning. Would everybody like to keep to 9:30 in the morning? January 19th, 9:30 a.m. Great. Okay. Do we
Yeah.
want to, I'm sorry?
Go further, does anybody that's currently on this call, because now you have a quorum here, does anybody who's currently on this call have a conflict with January 19th? If there is, then we would pick another date, right? So I'm just saying, right now I look at the calendar, there's nothing wrong, nothing on school-wise. If
School-wise,
everybody's okay, we're good.
Everybody's good. Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, then the next meeting typically is in April. I don't know if April is too late because June last year, I don't know why June last year was canceled. I don't know if there was nothing to discuss or it was just kind of a end of the school year month, so why do anything? So maybe we make the 4th meeting in May instead, and then do something between January and May. Since the
I would
charter-
think leading up to the election, the budget is important timing. And that even though we're all busy with other things, this is like the crucial time to vote yes on the budget type of conversation. So I'm thinking just before the budget, like maybe the week or 2 before, when you really ramp up to get people to vote. So we pass by more than, 0.1% of the population.
I'm looking at my calendar to see when that budget vote is because I don't know it off the top of my head.
May.
16th. Okay, so that budget is, the budget vote for the school board is Tuesday, May 16th. So Diane, are you suggesting the week before?
No, wait, like a week, a few weeks before that. So either the first week of May or the last week of April. Definitely important to kind of gear everybody up again to get out there to get the vote out.
Okay, so there's April,
So Deb, the only thing is we don't have those dates, between those, that last week in April and the first week in May is usually when the board and Ms. O'Hara are going around to all the HSAs with the budget meetings. I don't know if we have those dates. I
Well-
know Diane's idea, but I actually thought May 11th might be nice because we would be done most likely with those meetings. It's the week before it's not even the week, it's a little bit before the budget vote, and it stays fresh on people's mind if we're discussing something about that. I mean, I don't,
okay, Parents Council did send a tentative calendar to me. But their dates are subject to change, right, Sarah? Yeah, Sarah's nodding her head, yes. So, yeah, there's a Parents Council meeting on Wednesday, May 10th. That's in the evening. So May 11th.
I don't think it really matters because there's the whole point of maybe Ms. O'Hara wouldn't be on this call, but that's really not the legislative task force conflict with going to to HSA meetings. So
No, I just didn't want the time to overlap. That's what I was saying. I didn't want there to be a scheduling conflict.
but I'm saying it doesn't have to be a scheduling conflict, that we all don't. The point, I think what Diane was saying is to make sure that it's kind of around budget time so that if there's anything that we need to address budget wise, we're talking about it. The truth of the matter though is by May 11th,
March and April is when we should meet then.
by May 11th, it's a little too late. I think so. If any,
11th is too late. I definitely think it's too late. What,
March
you're
9th.
saying you can't do anything? Julie, why was the last week of April bad? I missed that.
I'm just saying, except the board members and Ms. O'Hara and the HSA people, who there are a lot of on this particular committee, we go around and we're doing presentations regarding the budget. So that's the only it's a scheduling conflict.
Okay,
That's
so
it.
what about the week before that? You're saying it's only the last week, so that's April 30th into May is Sunday. So what about the week like the 24th?
but
So
Diana, can I just,
about Monday?
Diana,
I don't know what we're doing. What are we meeting?
what is the purpose of our meeting?
You're up with a date.
No, I'm asking you, you said you wanted us, the legislative task force, Diane, to meet around budget time. And I'm asking, what would we be meeting about regarding the budget as a legislative task force? I'm asking so we could figure out the dating, because if it has anything to do that affects the budget, it should be way before the board adopts the budget.
Right.
So, us talking about something after
What's the date of the adoption of the budget? Isn't that like February?
No, it's April.
the beginning of April.
Like the
right? When is
second
the
week in
20th?
April, I think, this year, right, Kathy?
Yeah. I think it would be good to have it kind of in May because then we can promote the budget more.
That was my point, Kathleen. Yes, that's what I was saying. But I was saying that you were saying the first week of May, you're too busy to do that. So, or Julie was saying you'd be too busy to do that in the first week of May. So I was suggesting the last week of April, but it seems like you're, my purpose was, Emily, to promote the budget.
Okay,
Julie, your point is that you're too busy promoting the budget to promote the this
Right.
By then things are settling down too. I think we could just pick a date. And if, like Emily was kind of saying, if I can't be here, you can all speak about things.
Perfect. Go for it
But-
then.
Is it the mission of this committee to promote the budget to the public? I think we
No.
have that covered in budget committee. We have it covered in the regular board.
No,
So
but there's also realistic part of it. There's also the realism of it.
So,
There's reality and purpose.
but can I say, like, I actually think if you're looking at dates, if I'm looking at our priorities that you're presenting, and all of our priorities have a financial impact on the state budget, which is approved by April 1st. So really the work of this committee should be at its most impactful January, February, March, right? With that time period when everyone's talking about the budget and getting those things in. The NYSERDA part is partial part. I mean, the electric buses were part of the budget this year. So if we want to be our most impactful as a committee, I see scheduling a meeting in January, February, and March, or if you can't do it in February because of all the breaks, do a January and a March and a follow-up in May afterwards to see what we need to do moving forward.
I agree with Julie. I think that the way this committee has worked in the past is really based on influencing the budget process or influencing our legislators to get our school districts more funding before the budget process. I understand. And I think to Julie's point, January, March, and then to Diane's point, you can do a May meeting and it could be, again, just a discussion of what we accomplished through our efforts and promoting the budget. So I think your next date should be in March.
Yes, that's why I was trying to say, pick something that's not June and then work between January and May, but yes. So
March 9th. What about March 9th?
Sure.
March 9th is completely empty on the school calendar. Is it okay, March 9th, 9:30 in the morning, okay with everybody here?
Sure.
Okay, and then May 11th, is that still good?
Yep.
May 11th at 9:30 a.m. Now, I may be out of town on May 11th, if my father lives so long, celebrating his birthday. Do we want to continue to meet virtually? Do you think we will have more people participating from the community? There isn't anybody here, but I don't know if that's because there was a mix up with the Zoom link. Do we want to meet in person, let's say in January and March? Do we like the Zoom format, given that we're not required to meet personally? So I leave that also up to the committee. No quorum here. Any preferences? No preferences? Okay, so then if there's no preference, then maybe we'll alternate and I can ask the other members of the group. Okay, I don't see any community members here. Are there any other comments? Is an hour meeting, I scheduled this for an hour today. Is an hour meeting sufficient for everybody? Does anybody think Dr. Hines, I see your thumb up. Anybody think we need to go longer than an hour? Great, okay. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Ms. O'Hara, I will coordinate with you on some of the finer points that you raised to make sure I haven't missed anything about the priorities and what to present to the board on November 8th. Just want to make sure I have it all down. And the next meeting will be on January 19th, 2023. And just stay tuned for updates. If I have anything to update the board, if there's anything that's gone on, I will certainly let this committee know in the meantime. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Hi.
Thanks for the vote of confidence. I hope I did mean sincerely have big shoes to fill. So thank you.